Hello and welcome back to the podcast. We are selling. My name's Lee Woodward, the author of the Complete Salesperson course and now Claiming Doors. Today, different pace, different topic. We are going to be interviewing Craig Lowth from Wilson's in Newcastle, the business brokers for buying and selling business. Craig's been part of our super coaching program this year, as preparing your home for sale is the same as preparing your business for sale. He joins us now. Craig, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Lee.
Craig, tell us your background, how long you've been doing business broking.
Started as a career in business and commercial banking. So I left uni way back when and went into corporate banking originally and served about 22 years in various banks, and then ended up in Newcastle, had some business dealings with a couple of guys that own a lot of commercial property up here, and they convinced me to come across to lead their business broking business back in, it was probably 2013.
Very good. What does a business broker actually do for our listeners that don't understand that process?
Surprisingly common for me to sit down with a business owner and they say, Craig, I don't know where to start with selling the business, which is, it's very usual for everyone to sell their properties and improve them and get a better price, but it's foreign to a lot of people to buy a business, build it up, improve it, and then sell it at a higher price. So we start by understanding the business and the business owner's needs and how quickly and why they want to get out of their business. And then we put a value on that business and where we think we can sell it in the market, exactly as you would with residential property.
Craig, you've been through an enormous amount of training this year as you've come through the super coaching program. And when we talk about the property improvement plan, this is no different to a business improvement plan. And for anyone out there that's considering selling a business, how do you get a business in shape, ready to sell?
It's remarkably similar. I sit in those classes with you and I know there's almost a mirror image of what I can do for business owners. So it's preparing the financial data to have it ready. We actually do the walk around with the business owners and get their perception on what's good value in their business and what buyers would want to know about their business. And we actually do that by shooting a video with them. It's like a video interview with the owner. So that's where we get that hidden value from business owners. We do it by video and ask them direct questions about it. Primarily, any business is bought and sold mostly off the back of the financial performance of the business. There's other factors that come into it, of course, but financial performance is key, and that means business owners need to get in touch with their accountant and prepare their financial statements early and have really been building towards this ideally for a few years.
Preparing your business for sale is a topic all of its own because there is so many businesses that what they think isn't important may be really important. And a question for you, Craig, has it changed a lot in the last 5 years of what value is? So when the purchaser comes in, and we'll be speaking about buying a business today as well, what is the value in a business today other than the profit? And is that hindered by, if the business owner wasn't there wouldn't be any money at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we talk about transferability of goodwill. And what that means is if the business is a sole operator, for instance, many tradespeople just run their own business as a sole operator. And whilst they've got a fantastic brand name in the community and they're highly sought after as tradespeople, that goodwill that they've built up over many years of work is not transferable to a new owner because it's all in their own personal name. So we look at that. We look at some businesses have a very important location aspect. For instance, a waterfront restaurant would be an example of that, where you can't really replace that location with anything similar in the community. It's all about dining on that waterfront.
How interesting. I just had a flashback then. Prior to real estate sales, I was a plumber, as you know, Craig. And one of my gigs that I had during my plumbing career was I worked for a company called JRC Hot Water. And every day, 8 of us would be out there in the trucks waiting for the pager to go off when there used to be a pager. And sure enough, every day, 15, 20 jobs would come in per plumber. And didn't matter which plumber you were. But the stickability of that business was the sticker. On every hot water system, there was a sticker with that phone number, and that phone number was worth a fortune because the people don't ring every week to have their hot water fixed, but every 5, 10 years when it busts, they go down, they look at the sticker, they ring the sticker, and that stickability was big value in that business.
That's a good point, Lee. A lot of the time, it's a shock to business owners when I say you need to be prepared to sell your mobile phone number with the business and your email. And unfortunately, a lot of business owners have a lot of personal emails going into their business email, and they also have all their personal stuff in their mobile phone. So and that's probably a 6 to 12 month process to start to strip all that away and rebuild all that in another mobile phone number.
Yeah, because today your phone is the least thing you use it for. It's an authentication process of your banking, your big passwords, your insurances. The phone itself is not important, but the number is your life customer number.
Yeah, so how we get through that is we've got a very good IT business that we don't partner with, but we recommend people get in touch with when they're selling, and or buyers do the same, to get that coordinated so that they can make sure they're getting the important bits out of their personal phone but selling all the goodwill that's attached to that phone number to the buyer.
Well, Craig, that was a great little helicopter over the owner's responsibility of the business. But today we're going to be focusing on purchasing a business. And it was interesting when this topic came about. Actually, you were in the training session when we were discussing it. And everybody knows someone who's trying to, especially at the moment, since COVID, they're going for a sea change. They're doing something in their life. It could be one of our real estate agents listening to this program right now, and their partner's about to buy a cleaning business. They're about to buy a house renovation business. A business is a business. It doesn't matter what it is. What do we need to know about buying a business, and what's some of the steps you'd recommend?
I generally cut the buying process into 3 steps. And the first is the inquiry and understanding exactly what the business is and how well it performs, how many hours per week, and what operationally a new owner will need to do in that business to keep it at least status quo. So the first sort of step or benchmark should be that a buyer should think, what have I got to do and how is this going to work for me to keep this business status quo? And then how much am I going to get out of that? And that includes analysing the financials, going for an inspection in the business. We encourage every buyer to engage with professional accountants or business coaches. Indeed, we subsidise and offer every business purchase through Wilson's, which is the brand we use with Movable. Every business that's purchased through us, we subsidise a business coaching session with a local business coach. And we've got 2 or 3 that we refer people to. We're not linked with them. There's no commission flow, but it's designed to help new business owners get off to the best start they can. And that includes critically analysing the performance of the business as it stands. And indeed, sometimes that means buyers don't go ahead with a purchase, but it's for the betterment of all. And, they need to be comfortable and confident that what they're looking at makes perfect sense to them and get advice.
What a great first step. Identifying the opportunity, start the research of the business and get some initial information. And this is an interesting part for the purchaser. And Craig, I'd love your validation on this, but many times people look at a business and think, I could do it better. I'm going to change this, change that. It's going to be amazing. And I remember a very famous chicken shop in DY in the Northern Beaches, Coyle's Chicken. And this guy owned it forever. It wasn't the flashiest place, but it had the best chickens anywhere. And every day it was packed. And the business was sold. The new owners came in, changed it all, renovated it over an 8-10 week period. And no one ever went back. What was working, but what got changed lost the entire value of that consistency of the business.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. Rarely we do see that happen. And that's the important bit about relying on advice from experts when you're buying a business. Listen to what they're saying. And inherently, I often think the business cycle, that buying a business, it's not that complicated. There's intuitively sort of know roughly what you've got to do to get it done, to buy a business and be successful. And the reality is it's not that different to that, what you imagine, but listen to the experts on the way through and get their advice. And when you enact that advice, it's just like going to your training sessions, Lee. When you use that advice and implement it, it works out a lot better.
It's such an interesting thing. And I love the saying, you can't read the label from inside the jar. So even me coming into all these wonderful real estate organisations, I get to see it different.
When you buy a business and start working in it, it's often much harder than you had imagined. But as well, within 2 or 3 months, you're starting to get systems and processes in place and understand how it all really functions. And yeah, that 3 to 6 month period I've found for buyers is crucial. Once they get through that, they generally start to accelerate the business.
Take us into step 2.
Step 2 is after a buyer has had a look at a business, done some initial analysis on the financials, and their accountant said, yeah, look, it seems okay. That's when they inspect the business and make an offer. Now, in business sales, because of the complexity and the number of different variables that need to be sorted out during the purchase process, we call that an expression of interest offer. We negotiate a fair price between the buyer and seller. And at that point in the process is when we ask solicitors to prepare a contract. So unlike with a residential property sale where you've got that contract ready to go, because the nature of buying a business can be so different for any individual buyer, we have a contract only prepared after an offer and acceptance has been agreed. That offer and acceptance can include terms such as how long does the buyer want to be trained in the business. It can include terms such as I'll agree to pay you 60 or 70% of the purchase price up front, but then the remaining 30% or 40% of that purchase price will be paid to you over the next 12 months or 18 months or even 2 years. And that balance that's remaining unpaid can be linked to the performance of the business over that next 2 years.
This is so powerful. And I think we're in a world today that, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of young people who would like to buy into a business or have shares in a business and let's get to buying the whole business. But funding is a massive issue. So a funding system where it's paid out over a period of time or there's a final end day payout seems to be more common now than ever.
There's a couple of versions of this, Lee, and it gets complicated, but essentially it can be done, rarely, but it can be done with 100% vendor finance. So that means a buyer comes to the business, agrees through contract, and there's often personal guarantees attached to this from the buyer, but they agree to buy the business for a great price. And if they're using vendor finance, then it's going to be full asking price. But the vendor then accepts monthly payments for that business and then right back to paying entirely for the business up front. And there are banks out there, and we have a network of commercial loan brokers that we refer buyers to. There are banks out there that will happily lend against cash flow and goodwill of businesses, but to the right buyers and to the right business. And certainly experience of the buyer and expertise matters in those cases because the banks, like everyone, wants the buyer to be successful.
So once we get all these terms and conditions correct, and by the way, that's not simple. I just said that, but I've sold 3 businesses and was very fortunate to buy the last one back in some of its assets. But the negotiation time, the term sheet, the final contract you sign, that can take a long time to get everyone in agreement.
Yeah, unfortunately, Lee, for me, it can. So we've had this year, we've had a deal that the contract was, or offer and acceptance was done within a couple of weeks. I had two buyers at the table. It was a race to exchange. So, and we've all probably experienced these cases where you've issued two contracts almost identical. They were in this case, and it's a race to exchange. Even in that scenario, it still took about 8.5 weeks for the fastest buyer to exchange on the contract. And it's just because there's so many bits and pieces to a business purchase that the buyer needs to be okay with, and indeed that sellers need to agree to. So, yeah, it can be anywhere from sort of 2 or 3 weeks up until, I think the longest I've had was about 6 months of extra due diligence and negotiation before a contract was exchanged.
I think part of the challenge there, Craig, is if you want to buy my business and I want to sell it to you, you and I talk and we go, okay. And if there's a business broker involved, even better, because you get the clarity when the business broker comes in. But then it goes to the lawyers and written in a way that no one can understand it. What's your thoughts on that?
And that's a very crucial aspect. And I learned that very early on. I was about 12 months into this business, brokering businesses, and I learned that good solicitors or good commercial lawyers will help nurse a deal through. Maybe, and without trying to offend any of your listeners, God love them, property conveyancers are fantastic, but many don't have much exposure to complex business transactions and all the terms. So they can agree to terms that would normally be a little bit questionable, and they'll question and dig their heels in on terms that in the big picture really don't matter. A great example of that is a non-compete clause. So a buyer will ask the previous owner of a business to agree not to start or not be a competing business in the same territory. Most of the times, business owners are getting out of that business because they want to retire. So they're quite aged and quite fatigued with running the business. They've been there, done that. They don't need much more money. They're well sorted. But buyers, solicitors, if they're inexperienced, will ask for, 50, 100 kilometre radius and 10 years non-compete. And in one case I'm thinking about, the business owner was 71 years old. And he said, Craig, why are they pushing back on this? Why do I need to give them 100 kilometres and 10 years? I'm 71. I'm not going to do this again. And, yeah, that variance between the two solicitors can become a bit of a duel rather than a cooperative sort of process to help the deal get through. Anyway, so good commercial solicitors matter.
And I think we're in a world now of traditional law and modern law. And I was speaking on a program with a lawyer on this who was a young female lawyer. And I asked a question which was very, very interesting about what is a contract. Now, traditionally, a contract is seen as the documents we know today written in thee, thy, there, he, say, you cannot. And you're reading it thinking, why isn't it in plain English? But my question, Craig, and I'd love your view on this, was, and I'll do an example of myself. If I was to sell my final shelf company, my final business, I would sit with the purchaser on a Zoom and say, let's do the deal. I'm agreeing to, you're agreeing to pay. I won't, you will. What you get is, there's all the training videos, there's all the audios, you got full rights to this. But if that could be articulated that we are both on the same page, the video can be an asset to the contract.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So you're talking about recording via video, an agreement between a buyer and a seller.
Correct. And then the lawyers can then look at the agreement between both parties, create the paperwork that will go alongside that, but that video is seen as part of the contract. So 5 years from now, it was you and I doing this Zoom contract, and you say to me, Lee, you said you would never appear at the Complete Salesperson course ever again. No, I didn't. We go in, and there's me saying, I will never do this ever again. And it can actually be and stand as a legal document.
I don't know how the law fraternity would view that, but certainly you've got I mean, the basics of any contract are offer, acceptance and consideration, aren't they? So
Yeah.
you've got the terms agreed to verbally. It's as good as in writing. Yeah, maybe that's a way forward.
I think it's the future. Now take us into step 3.
Step 3 is the easy one, surprisingly, which is settlement. So all the legwork in buying a business is done between when you offer and accept and when you exchange the contract. Because in a business sale situation, once you exchange, there's no cooling off. There's no subject to it's everyone's all in. So the beauty is that once you've signed, all you've got to do is at the agreed date, pay for the business.
So love the 3-step process here. Just as an example, and no names required, but what types of business have you been selling in the last 2 years?
Very interestingly, the most recent business and that was the one where we had a race to exchange and is due to settle in the next 2 weeks, was a business that was involved in sign writing, replacing real estate signs. That was quite a lucrative business. But so everything and anything, engineering, childcare, pubs and hospitality are a big part of what we transact here. And that's mainly because there's a lot of hospitality that transacts. So I love to be in amongst the hospitality fraternity so that I can keep up with that. And that's like bread and butter for me. So lots of different businesses.
What's been some of your favourite sales over your career?
Lee, for a buyer, the best business to buy is one that's very simple, requires very little effort, but has a niche customer base that really have very other options to go to either you or one or two other players, and is very profitable. And scenario was, I don't know if you know about concrete laying, and when you lay concrete, you have the steel Rio that goes into the bed of the concrete, and you have little chairs, they're called, that lift that steel mesh off the ground and hold it in place while the concrete's poured.
Yep.
Now, when you're doing runways or roadways or tunnels, those chairs and indeed the Rio needs to be very high standards. Indeed, the chairs that keep the Rio mesh off the ground in runways and in big roadways are actually small concrete pods, and they have 2 bits of steel sticking out the top. So the business that we sold manufactured those concrete pods with the 2 bits of steel sticking out the top, which acted as tie downs for the mesh. They were manufactured in a little one-off plant in Vietnam. So he had a few people in Vietnam that he paid to manufacture these concrete pods by the thousands. Every one of those pods, one from every batch, was then tested in an authorised laboratory in Vietnam to be gauged of how strong it was. And then they were bagged up in little bags, put in a shipping container and sent over to Australia. So he had himself and his wife. They were working, or his wife was working 3 days a week. The orders would come in via email and go out. There was very little effort involved. Customers kept coming to them. They were one of 2 suppliers of that product in Australia. And he was making 50% margin, and his turnover was over $2 million. So his role in that whole business, he said to me, Craig, my role is 3 months of the year, I've got to go and make sure I have a wine and dine process with all the people that build the roadways to know that we're still here and still supporting them. That's it. So he was,
wow.
Yeah, it was a great business.
What an interesting story. And, there's a lot of people that, as I mentioned in the start of this podcast, go through that sea change of, I want to do something different, and they've got the skills. I've got some friends that have just acquired some bad businesses, and that's the reason they acquired them, meaning they got it at the right price because the business suffered from lead generation. Yet if you're good at lead generation or you've got a need, you look at a property management business, a large one of 10, 20, 30,000, they can move into the solar business pretty quick because how many rooftops they've got. So lead generation doesn't become an issue. And every business in the world has got lead generation, lead conversion, client fulfillment, as we look at those 3 major swim lanes. But if your skill is in lead generation and the company you're buying always suffered from, oh, we're very good at what we do, but we just don't get enough leads, it's amazing what business opportunities are out there.
Yeah, very true. The best buyers for me are buyers that look at businesses that are vertically integrated or linked to their own business. Any business that touches the same customers that your business touches is a great business for you to bolt on, because you're going to get two hits at the revenue. You're going to get the revenue and the profits from the business that you bought, but also because you're dealing with the same customers, you're much more likely to get revenue from those customers in your own business.
Now, Craig, you represent the business owner who's selling. Do you do acquisitions on behalf of the buyers who are trying to buy and say, look, I'm looking at this business. Craig, you know what you're doing. You know what to look for. Can I engage you to do my investigations?
We do, Lee. It's we charge a higher mandate fee up front, and a lower portion of that would be success fee, simply because it's a higher risk process for the buyer. There's every chance. And remembering that when I'm approached to do that, and I was approached yesterday to do this exact thing in a hospitality situation, and the truth is, and it was a situation where the business isn't going that well, and that's probably well known in the community, or perceived to be that way in the community. Nobody actually knows, but yeah, they've asked me to do that. So the only way to do that is, for me, is charging a high mandate fee up front, a smaller success fee, but then, going into that and talking with the business owner to see if he's interested in selling, and then to try and get the information out of him and negotiate a fair price.
Absolutely amazing. Craig Lowth, final question for you. If someone's looking to buy a real estate business off their boss, or that they're moving interstate and I've always wanted my own real estate shop, I've always wanted my own real estate business, what would be your advice in the due diligence and the thinking of buying a real estate business?
I wouldn't be a massive fan of buying a sales business unless you were very confident and maybe owned another patch. But certainly the cash flow, that's recurring cash flow from property management business, is extremely attractive. And there's standard industry multipliers for that sort of stuff, and you can bounce around generally numbers of about 3 times, but each situation is going to be different. It's about looking for the reliability of your income stream, and then how profitable that income stream is. And, is there an ability to change prices for your customers if you're looking at that business and it's not generating quite enough money? If you went in there and changed the prices that you're charging your customers, so, the management fees for your property owners in that case, are they going to tolerate that, or will that inspire them to look around? So often in that sector, Lee, that's a good example of often where there's retentions in the purchase price. So that might be where you're paying a portion of the purchase price up front, but then you're reserving certain amounts of that purchase price for future periods to make sure the business does track where you agreed it would be tracking at the time of the purchase.
Absolutely fantastic. Craig Lowth, business broker of wilsons.com.au, and I'll put that link in the show notes. And Craig, if anyone's looking to get hold of you and get some advice, do you work only in New South Wales or do you work nationally?
It's a little bit more confined than that. I'm only in Newcastle, Hunter Valley, but there's a body that I'm a member of called the Australian Institute of Business Brokers, and every broker in that institute is, qualified and vetted to be a member. So anyone out there that wants to buy or sell a business, you'd be well served by first looking for brokers that are represented as part of that Australian Institute of Business Brokers.
And for anyone thinking, okay, I'm inspired, or my wife wants to buy a business now, where's the best place to check out businesses for sale?
There's 13 different business sales websites, probably more. There's 13 that I know of. Seek, Business for Sale, commercialrealestate.com.au. They've both got very good business sale platforms, or indeed I'd recommend they always consider a sea change to Newcastle and look at Wilson stock that they use.
Absolutely love it. Hey, mate, what's some of the businesses you got on the market at the moment?
We've got a transport business at Taree that transports building products. We manage confidentiality of our clients very, very strictly. So, look, suffice to say, it's highly profitable, and we're not being cheeky with the asking price. It's only about 10 or 15% above the value of plant and equipment in that case. But the trucks are worth about 2.5, 3 mil. So we're on the market at 3.2.
Very good. Any others you got on the market at the moment?
Yeah, engineering, a large engineering firm at Rutherford. That's on the market, including land. We do a deal for 14 mil on that. I've just listed a fantastic waterfront restaurant in a suburb of Newcastle. It's trading fantastically well, very, very strong client base. And we're on the market at about 600,000 for that, right down to a small bakery cafe at Lawn, which is just a town just near Maitland, and we're on the market at 275.
Absolutely wonderful information. Craig, thank you for joining us and sharing your knowledge in the business broking space.
Thanks, Lee. It was a pleasure.